News. What message are you trying to send today?
Excuse me.
I want my children for the future.
Careful.
That's what I want. That's why I'm doing this. The government needs to take action.
Kathy Eastburn, one of 3 arrested this morning after gluing herself to a train. Day 3 of the Extinction Rebellion in London, and the disruptions spreading. From the roads to the rails, this pop-up protest closing a line at Canary Wharf.
For Extinction Rebellion, today we're calling for a pause. This is a minor disruption to our lives in comparison to the disruption across the world that's happening right now due to the ecological crisis.
The action behind me is the pointy end of the Extinction Rebellion protest today, the first of its kind, which is designed to disrupt the heart of the London transport network. But on the TfL website right now, there are more severe delays on the District line than here on the Docklands Light Railway. And I guess that's part of the strategy, to begin and test the water to see how seriously these protests are treated, and potentially to get more serious as the days go on. The organisers are promising action could last for 2 weeks or longer, but 2 hours here and it was all over. The activists unstuck from the roof and introduced to the back of a van. Easy enough with just 3, but in central London, large-scale sit-ins continue, with more than 300 arrested so far. But this is a costly closure. The West End's retail lobby claiming the protests have cost business £12 million. The price is worth it, say protesters, who want the government to cut climate emissions to 0 in the next 6 years.
Some people have accused you of targeting London commuters. Are you targeting the right people with this action?
So yes, because the only way we can get the message to the government is to hit their priority. Government priority above all else is the economy. So we have to hit the economy. We cause economic disruption to the level where we get the government to meet with us and meet our demands.
At Waterloo, London finally gets its Garden Bridge. Some arrests here today too, but more yoga and peaceful protest. Mid-afternoon, and the next action's closer to home. Jeremy Corbyn specifically, 4 Labour and Corbyn supporters glued and chained to his fence, among them Councillor Skeena Rathore.
I think we want to raise the alarm around the inaction of the Labour Party, and for us to plea with Jeremy that he steps into a leadership role.
And Jeremy's here, in fact. Mr. Corbyn, what's your response to this climate protest?
I never give interviews or discussion outside my house in any way. Thank you very much.
But there are protesters right outside you, sir.
Thank you very much for coming.
Shouldn't you be speaking to them about exactly why it is they're outside your house, complaining about the way in which the Labour Party is treating the issue of climate change? Mr. Corbyn?
Extinction Rebellion says mainstream politics doesn't have the answers. They want a citizens' assembly on climate change, and they're not stopping.
Well, with me now is Farhana Yamin, a climate change lawyer who advised the Marshall Islands for the 2015 Paris Agreement, and yesterday was arrested after gluing herself to Shell headquarters in London. And that's not your only qualification. I mean, you've worked for the EU and been a member of the IPCC panel on climate change. Let's just have a look at what you did yesterday and talk us through what was going through your head as you went from respected lawyer to direct action protester, causing great controversy.
Well, I hope I'll still be a respected lawyer. Many respected lawyers in the past, you know, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela and others have broken the law at certain periods in history. It's become necessary to say that the political system is stuck and that something needs to happen. And breaking the law, in my case, is about peaceful mass civil disobedience, and that I was part of almost now 300 people who've been arrested. So this group, Extinction Rebellion, is calling on everyone to start engaging in non-violent, peaceful civil disobedience to make the point that we're, you know, stuck in this power vacuum where industry has essentially put the brakes and lobbied very hard for science not to be respected.
I mean, you have literally crossed the line, and figuratively, though, as well, haven't you? In that you're saying the system doesn't work. The system you've worked within to try and make the world a better place has failed.
It has. Look, I'm very proud of all the things that I did, and I think that those are really important legal rules that we've enshrined in the Paris Agreement, we've got in the Climate Change Act, we've got in the EU legislation, we've got 1,500 laws around the world that have been enacted in the last 30 years.
Which have driven you to that.
But none of them add up to planetary safety. None of them are in line with the well below 2 degrees and the 1.5 degree goal, which is also enshrined in Paris. So it's time now for governments especially to accept that they need to not just kick this down the line to the next election, to the next review, to the next big COP that's coming along where they can showcase a little bit more action, but to actually understand that this is an emergency.
And to all those people who've been inconvenienced by the protests, and there's been lots of anger about it, from people saying, what's the point of creating a traffic jam? It's just making climate change emissions, carbon emissions worse. What would you say?
There is inconvenience, and I'm glad that you labelled...
And greater carbon emissions.
I'm glad that you've called it inconvenience, and this is the kind of disruption that we need to tell people to weigh up this disruption against the disruption of the lives and livelihoods and deaths that are being caused, in some of the small island countries that I represent. Their entire economies have been wiped out, not just a 1 day and a 2-hour delay in their journeys.
But how do you think causing traffic jams and inconvenience pressures governments?
First of all,
it just annoys people, doesn't it? It doesn't do anything to the government. The government's all on holiday.
We have had so much support. It's quite compelling. So it's not true that it annoys everyone. Many people are curious. So many people have said that they support this rebellion phase. Many people have chosen to join. I've been physically present on Waterloo Bridge, for example, where people have been curious and joined and understood that there is something that needs to happen, that something different needs to happen. So I think by highlighting the fact that, we haven't come as far as we should have done in these 30 years and asking the politicians to own the emergency, we need to make that much clearer to everyone.
But do you think the action is targeted in the right way? I mean, what I'm saying is, you're not really hitting the government here. You can, there's now talk of hitting the London Underground, which is one of the most, environmentally sound ways to get around the capital. I mean, what's the point of that?
I think the point is to create some disruption that's much louder than the business as usual political coverage that we've been getting, frankly. In my time as a lawyer for 30 years in this process, I would say 20 years of that first period since 1989 was around the media discussing whether climate change was real or not and having lined up sceptics versus others. So we've lost about 20 years because of the way in which the media, for example, and the government chose to allow this debate to just percolate. And now we can't lose another decade. So we need to shift people's consciousness. We need to actually cause something different to happen and for people to accept in their hearts that they need to change their lives.
But one of your key demands is to be carbon neutral in Britain. Or is it Britain or the world by 2025? I mean, what impact would that have on people of modest means?
Well, people need to understand that there are huge benefits to shifting to a clean, zero-carbon economy, to reducing the use of natural resources.
But do you know what the cost would be?
We don't know what the cost would be, but, the costs are not everything. We need to preserve what we value best in society, which is to secure the well-being, to secure good jobs, to secure welfare. And the system currently isn't securing that. Britain is a very divided nation. There's huge amounts of inequality. We are not all sharing in the prosperity that we've been promised under this, carbon-intensive lifestyles don't benefit everyone equally. So it's not like the system's delivering benefits across the whole anyway.
But it's often more expensive, isn't it?
It doesn't have to be, and that's one of the demands, that any actions that are taken, prioritise those who are suffering the most, including in other countries, and put climate justice at the heart of climate policy.
Farhana Yameen, thank you very much indeed.